Hello and welcome to Soul Symbols. My name is Shelley. I'm a writer, an astrologer, and a card reader, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. Today is Tuesday, and it is How to Tarot Tuesday. And what that is that is a video series that I host every Tuesday. And what I do is each week I go through the 78 card tarot. I choose one card per week. And what I do is I go ahead and describe the symbols. We go over the symbolism of the card, and then I will let you choose from one of 3 tarot decks, and then we will go ahead and do a spread to see how that card manifests in your life. Today we are talking about card number 18 of the Major Arcana, and that is the Moon. The Moon is a wonderful and loony card, and it is a quite deep one, and I'm really excited to get a chance to talk about it today. I've actually written a few, when I first got it back into tarot, I wrote a few blog posts, and I posted it on like my social media like Facebook and other places, and there's a few times in my card reading career, so if you could call it a career, where I just felt like I really kind of went off the deep end, like I was passionate about the subject matter, and I'm sure everyone thought I was crazy to talk about the moon and the full moon and what it means, but a lot of the same description that I wrote in that post I'm going to be talking about today. So again, you know, never feel like you're crazy. And that's one of the things the moon kind of brings out in you. Never feel like you're crazy. If you're passionate about what you're talking about, you're meant to do it. So I am. That's another reason I'm excited to talk about this card today. Now, if you would like to skip past the description part of the card, you are welcome to do that. All of the timestamps are in the description box below. You can go straight to picking a deck and then choosing your read. But I do have 3 different tarot decks. The first deck for the series, every How to Tarot Tuesday, will be the Ruygt. That is the cornerstone. If you are not familiar with tarot, the Ruygt is the cornerstone traditional tarot deck. The second deck that I went with is the Tarot of the Southwest Sacred Tribes, and as we get into the description, you'll see why I went with this deck. It's got beautiful images. And then the third deck is my latest obsession. I am absolutely crazy in love. I'm hearing Beyonce in my head, you know, sorry, I'll stop doing that. But this is like my new deck, and it's so gorgeous, but the moon in this deck is really gorgeous, and it pertains a lot to the meaning of the card, and so that I chose that as my third deck with the Spacious Tarot. And if you are interested in any of the decks, the name and the authors are in the description box below. But the Spacious Tarot just came out recently, and I did actually finally get a chance. I make my own bags. I sew for all of my cards, and I did actually get a chance to make a coordinating bag for my Spacious Tarot. And I joked, I've had a bad habit of making the bags a little too big lately, and the same thing happened, and instead of sewing it inwards, I ended up giving it a stripe. So I'm telling you, every single one of these sewing adventures turns out differently, and so I've got dots and stripes, but the colors, you know, I think I did a good job. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but I get joy out of this. This is what I do. This is what I like to do. But I will stop rambling, and what I will do is go ahead and jump right into the meaning. So the moon is the number 18 of the Major Arcana. It is the second celestial body that we're going to talk about. Last week we talked about the star. And with the moon, when we look at the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith rendition of it, you see the moon in the sky, and it looks like it is raining or crying droplets. You see what on the outside it kind of looks like a sun, and then inside you see the face of the crescent moon, and then you see the teardrops or the rain that it seems to be pouring down. In the background you see mountains with what looks like a path through it, and then you see 2 towers. in front of the two towers, you see two dog-like creatures. One looks very domesticated, and the other one looks a little bit like it has more like wolf-like ears. And then next to it, you have what looks like a lake or a body of water. And then you have stones, and from the body of water, you have a crustacean. It kind of looks either like a crawfish or a lobster or a crab, but definitely a crustacean. And what the moon's meaning is, the moon has a lot of meaning. The entire Major Arcana is a story. Just like we began with the Fool, and then we moved into the Magician, and we went through all of the stages. The mountaintops that you see in the background have been seen quite a few times at this point. You saw it in the background of the Hermit and the Fool. And you also saw the towers in the background of the Death card. And what's important to remember is that mountains are, like in Lenormand, they're deemed to be challenges. Biblically, the path through the mountains is the valley, right? They talk, if you're familiar with the biblical story, you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And we had a tarot on death not too long ago. You're welcome to watch that video. But in the background, you saw these two towers. So it's almost like you've gone through the valley of death and come between the two towers. Now, there is quite a few. The two towers are almost like two parallels. They're two, also you can see it from a Lenormand stance with towers. Towers mean protection. It means isolation. It means seeing things from a higher perspective. It means protection, because you're seeing things from a higher ground where you cannot be touched. But here you have two towers paralleling themselves, right? And so it's almost like kind of mirroring one another. And in the same vein of mirroring, the moon itself does not get its light naturally. It reflects the light from the sun. And in astrology, the sun represents the ego. It represents the divine masculine. It's the male. It's the I am. And then the moon represents the feminine. It rules the mother. It rules the emotions. And it is a mirror. It's a mirror. A lot of the responses that you have are based on either ego or emotion, conscience or subconscious, right? And when you look towards the body of water, the water plays into that. The moon controls the tide. It has a gravitational pull. It is within the Earth's orbit. And humans are 72% water, right? You hear the stories all the time about how nurses dread the night shift when they have to work on a full moon, because everyone seems to act a little crazy, right? It's like the moon pulls on you. It like delves or dredges up things that are hidden. So now the last kind of depiction and in those waters, because when you think about it, and in the tarot, water means emotion, right? So when you think about it, when you think about the moon meaning emotion and pulling on the water, pulling on your emotions, you would immediately think of something that's very hidden, or something that's churned, or something that's not part of your conscious mind. And when you look at the crustacean, this was an insight that I got from my tarot retreat. One of the teachers, a very knowledgeable teacher, had mentioned, she goes, that crustaceans, they feed off feces and they clean the water by eating feces. So they eat crap. So what this crustacean is doing is it's purifying the water by ingesting or filtering out the crap that's in it, right? And it makes the water clean. And you see, he seems to be looking like he's about to crawl out of that water, right? Now, one of the things that I lamented on in the blog post, the really, the crazy one that I thought that I'd get so much censure for, was the fact that the two dogs, One looks like a domesticated dog and one looks like a wolf. And I went into a really long spiel about that, where the thing that's interesting about the dog and the wolf is that there's actually kind of three different types of dogs. There's domesticated dogs, there's coyotes, and then there's wolves. And believe it or not, coyotes are kind of like they're kind of like a fake wolf, not in a bad way, but they're really harmless, and their ears are different, their call is different. But coyotes are they act on their own. They can be isolated. But wolves, they travel in packs. But what is interesting about this, and one of the reasons I picked the Southwest Sacred Tribes card, was because when you look here, you see what looks like a wolf with kind of, it looks very yin and yang, right? It looks like a wolf here with a little bit of domesticated dog in him. And then the other side, it looks like a domesticated dog with a little bit of wolf in him, right? And I want you to hold on to that perception for just a minute, because that's really going to come up when we start to get into the descriptions. Now, as you can see, there's a lot going on in this card. You got the moon reflecting the sun's rays. It looks like it's crying. You got mountains and paths and towers and wolves and crustaceans and water, and it, rippled water. And what it is that in that vein, when you think about the reflection of the sun, you think about the moon being emotions and the sun being ego, and the fact that the moon is a mirror. Its glow is not its own light. It's reflecting the sun. And what it means is that it tends to represent the things that are hidden. It represents the things that are deep down inside of you. Maybe you have kind of an ego persona that you show the world, but your emotions and the things that result from that ego, because ego is sense of self, right? It is I am. And humans, it's everything, every psychological dynamic of our psyche is there for a reason. You have an ego for a reason. It's because you need a sense of self. As you go through this world, you have a sense of self that you project. It is I am. This is how I want to be out in the world. But by establishing that ego, there can be a lot of things under the surface. And those things under the surface can stem from a lot of things. It can stem from your childhood. It can stem from your environment. It can stem from you cultivating that ego and the byproducts of cultivating that ego. What if you work really hard to project yourself in a certain way into the world, but the byproduct of that is maybe you're pushing down your needs or you neglect your needs? Now, real quick, to put the astrologer hat on for 2 seconds, the other thing is that the moon is ruled by the astrological sign of Cancer. Its opposite is Capricorn. And Capricorn is ruled by, the goat. It's ruled by Saturn. Capricorn is known for being that person who goes out into the world and builds themselves. They're the CEOs. They're the ones who identify with the outward business world. And then Cancers tend to be the home and family people. They tend to be the mothers, the nurturers. And you can be a man and be a Cancer sun sign. It just means that you nurture. You nurture people. It's not so much about how I can get my way in the world. It's that inner world. It's that upbringing, right? So with that, it can mean illusion. Again, the moon is reflecting the sun. You can see it. I really love the way that this one depicts almost the phases of the moon. It looks like the shutter of a camera, right? And you still have the same, towers. I actually think of the movie The Never-Ending Story. If you've ever seen that movie, there's two sphinxes, that after he answers the riddle, there are two towers on either side, and they're quite terrifying. It's almost like you can be shot from either side, right? Is there something up in that tower ready to snipe at you, right? But what it is it's a lot of illusion. It's that false picture that you tell yourself. The moon represents a lot of what is churning underneath the surface. So what it usually tends to mean, at least in a tarot sense, the moon has a little bit of a nicer connotation in the Lenormand side. But the moon, another representation I always think of is if you've ever seen the vintage movie Snow White by Disney. When Snow White escapes into the woods, she's terrified, right? And she's seeing eyes everywhere, and she's seeing darkness, and she gets terrified and she collapses to the ground. And she doesn't realize that, you know, the eyes that she's seeing are the animals, and that she's okay, that she's safe. That's kind of the illusion of the moon. When you are out in the darkness and you can only see using the light that's reflected, everything looks dark, everything looks glowing, it looks otherworldly, it looks illusionary. And what it does is that just like you go with your gut or go with your emotions, you're almost navigating your path by feel or by instinct. But when you go with instinct, instinct can be misinterpreted. It can be everything is dark. You don't know if the eyes that you're seeing are mean or you know, benevolent. And so a lot of times the moon in tarot means having unrealistic ideas. Again, it's about not knowing where to go. It's about being lost and kind of disillusioned. The towers in the moon are kind of like a test. I always look at the moon and I always think, one thing about the moon that I've learned over looking at it, because it's a very strange card. When you're first learning it, it's really difficult to get a handle on it. But the one thing that I learned about it is, have you ever had a moment where you had a knee-jerk reaction? And it was because of something emotional. Maybe you had a car accident while you drove one time, or maybe you had a grandparents who got injured in a car accident because they were driving in the rain at night. And then all of a sudden, you know, years later, you weren't even in the accident, but you know, you always remembered that had happened to someone that you love, and someone says, hey, let me drive you home, it's right down the street, but it's raining and it's at night, and you're absolutely like freak out. That is a moon reaction. It's anytime you have a deep-seated fear about something and you're confronted with it and you have this instinctual response, a knee-jerk response, that is a characteristic of the moon. Now, the other side of it, with it being the sun and the moon and the reflection, is that a lot of times the moon means projection. And again, it representing feeling, comes up a lot in relationships. Sometimes if you're feeling insecure, you might project that onto your partner. Sometimes when you feel like you want to be in control, you will project that. Instead of actually being in control, you'll make the other person seem like they're trying to control you. And it's reflection, right? You're taking your emotions and projecting it like a screen to someone else. So in that vein, it usually means a lot of releasing kind of your inner demons. When you look at the moon, it could mean that you're feeling something that you don't understand. You might be having an emotional response that you have no idea. You're like, I always think of it like a cork. You know, when you push a cork down and then it pops up somewhere completely else, you know, but it pops up. If you are pushing something down in your life, or maybe you've had some kind of trauma or something happened to you, something else that comes along and triggers that trauma will have that cork popping right back up. And that's when you'll probably see the moon card come out. It's like something's hidden, right? Now, the beautiful part about the moon is that if you are having an emotional response, you are having a loony cycle, right? The wolf side of it, and the domesticated dog, when you think about it, a dog is really a descendant of a wolf. And a wolf has very sharp instincts. It's wild, right? It goes with its needs. And what the moon is about, your inner needs. It's about your instinctual, almost bestial desires. Now, a domesticated dog is one that has evolved over generations to be acceptable by society. So the other way, the moon, just like it can project in families or project in relationships, sometimes it can be a reflection of the parallel between the outside image, and remember we said the ego, the sun, the moon, the emotions reflects the ego. So sometimes it can be you in your everyday life projecting the image of a domesticated dog, but inside there's a wolf wanting to come out. Sometimes it can be that on the outside you're showing the wolf, but inside you are trying to be civilized. You're trying to, be that domesticated dog. So the important thing about the moon, and when the moon card comes out, it means plumb the depths of what you are feeling. You are pushing down something that you want. You are denying your inner wolf. And that inner wolf is going to come out and howl. The inner wolf will pop back up like a cork if you do not acknowledge what your desires are, or if you do not acknowledge the source of why you are reacting emotionally or psychologically the way that you are. So the other powerful thing about the moon is, just like, the nurses who are afraid to work the night shift, people do crazy things when their emotions are not honored. If you do not identify what's going on with you, you're gonna have an instinctual, knee-jerk wolf versus dog reaction, right? The wolf in you will come out even though you have to keep up the face of the dog. The civilized faceplate is the domesticated dog. The instinctual, wild, what I want out of life, what I desire at a core level is your inner wolf. Now, in that vein, it can mean a lot of shadow work, which is a good thing because the moon casts shadows, right? And this plays in perfectly to our third card. You see, everything looks like it's glowing, right? Now, one thing I kind of liked about this card too is not only does it have a real normal depiction of the moon, like a full moon, everything's tipped in silver moonlight, which I think it looks glowing and gorgeous, right? But one thing I also thought was neat is the fact it has mushrooms. And it is. It's a, just like it means being trippy, right? It means being loony, it's that lunar madness, like, God, where did that come from? Right? And in that sense, the moon can be positive. When it comes out, if you are not afraid to do the shadow work, if you're not afraid to say, I'm having a crazy emotional response to this event, where in the hell did that come from? What is that about? And when you actually get down and boil it down, if you get very honest with yourself, and this is where we get to the crustacean, if you get real honest with yourself, you see this water is rippled, right? If you kind of see what is tainting your water, right? If you see what's in, I'm sorry, I know it's such a horrible analogy to say, well, go ahead and eat crap, right? But if you filter your water, if you filter your emotions, if you get honest and say, I'm having a knee-jerk reaction, I need to figure out where this is coming from. And if you actually sit down and say, I got jealous, and I think I got jealous because of this. Or if you say, I feel insecure, I think I'm insecure because of this. Or I'm feeling really sad and irritable. Why do I feel sad and irritable? Maybe you miss somebody. Maybe you've had a lot of loss that you haven't dealt with. Maybe something crappy happened at work the other day and you just pushed it down and didn't acknowledge it and just said, oh, well, let me just write it off. But you never sat down and threw a pillow or, screamed about it. You never let it out. And it tainted your water. It tainted your water, and the moon came out because the moon needed to. You needed to do something to purge the shadows. You had to do something to recognize what was going on. Now, here, in that same vein, it means being kind of bewildered. Sometimes when you're working through moon emotions, it feels very, the moon can also it is represented by the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is all about illusions, right? It's all about the dream state. And Pisces, just like any sign, has its pros and its cons. The pros is that through your dreams, you can learn a lot about the psyche. Just like I read symbols, just like you read symbols, you can really get a lot by your dreams or your subconscious. Now, the downside is, in the same drawer that you have all of the beautiful illusions that, a lot of Pisceans are work in movies, which is mirror and lights. They're photographers. It's, it's all about the negative and the positive, and it's light and mirrors. And what is a moon but light and mirrors? And the thing about that is that you can have a really lovely dream from that, but you can also have a very confusing and murky illusion from that. It can mean that you are lost. It can mean that you're lost and you're not seeing things clearly. It can mean that you're entertaining unusual thoughts, or you're just feeling really bizarre things and you don't know where that's stemming from. It can also mean that you're just feeling like you're losing your purpose. If you've ever had those moments where you just are feeling just kind of lost, dazed and confused is what I'm thinking, and you just don't know where to go, and you are just kind of sitting in the dark woods with no direction. Now, if you do study astrology, there's great books that talk about Neptunian influences, because I do believe that there's moments in life, and actually Neptune is in its ruling sign of Pisces right now. So if you have any mutable signs in your chart, if you have any Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Gemini, you're probably feeling this because it's either opposing, squaring, or conjuncting. It does make you feel really you're going to feel this on an intense level. But it's kind of that, again, just kind of that time when you really get, there is a purpose in every type of transit there is. There is no wasted energy. But sometimes if you've ever had those moments in your life where you are just sitting in the woods and you don't know where to go, you feel really lost, you feel adrift is the best word I can describe. You don't have a goal, you don't have a direction, you just feel kind of like, whoa, where am I? Where am I? There is emotions to be gleaned. It's an opportunity to sink into your unconscious needs. But it is a time when you are not going to be thinking clearly and you will be easily confused. It is also a time that if you see the moon next to a card that represents addiction or overindulgence, it can mean the side effects of, indulging too much in something. Now, the cool thing is that when it comes to people or situations, the moon usually means that you're going into a fluctuating time. Things are not going to be clear. But again, you are called to use your instincts. You're called to go with your gut. The other thing about the moon is that it does represent the mother. And in particularly, it could mean mother issues. If you've had certain childhood upbringing where maybe you had either conflicting, the way that you were nurtured and the way that you nurture others, those are coming under consideration. And it really is something that the moon kind of pulls or churns up in you. Now, when speaking of people, it does rule mothers, women. It rules artists, like movie stars. It rules psychics, poets, psychotherapists. It can also rule people who are, more in touch with their unconscious mind, or it can rule people who are experts in things that are illusionary. Like it could be someone who's a special effects artist, a voiceover artist, someone who does costume design or cosplay, or at the very least, it can also be someone who handles pools or water or aquariums, or and it can be someone who understands wine. It can be a wine enthusiast or someone who understands the nuances of good wine or things like that. But that is the moon in upright, and you can see it's such a complex card. It's such a complex card. Now, the moon in reverse usually means one of two things. It can mean that the influence, that the fog is clearing, right? Usually the first thing that it means is that the fog is clearing and that you are getting out of that confused state. The beautiful thing about, it's like you're starting to see things as they really are, or that you're just shedding light. You might be coming to the conclusion of all of the psychoanalysis that you've been going through. Now, the other thing is, it can rule mental health therapists as well. Now, on the danger side of it is that, again, a card in the reverse can also mean the extreme or the exaggerated energies of that card. And in that circumstance, the moon is a bit more formidable. Just like some of our heavy hitters, like the death and the devil card. The moon in reverse means extreme illusion. It means that you are so lost in the woods that you feel like you'll never get out. And that one, I probably fear the moon in reverse in an extreme than I do any of the other cards. But the reason being is it's because you do feel like you're in the dark. You feel like you're, it is real strong, confusion. It's real strong illusions and daydreamings. It's like you're almost too far gone. The moon in reverse can mean somebody who has a drug addiction and who's someone who's really in the deep end, so to speak. It can mean someone who is playing the victim, someone who is really, manipulating. It can be someone who blames someone else for their problems. It's just, again, that not in an intentional or abusive way, but it's someone who's really lost and not able to get a grip on their emotions, so therefore they're exhibiting those emotions in such an extreme way that it's detrimental to not only themselves but others. It can be extreme, it can be someone who lies. It could be someone who's lying because of a disease, because of they might have, a really impending type of, disease that makes them feel God. The moon in reverse can be a sign of dementia or some other type of really an impediment that's really interfering with someone's mental and emotional health. Now, it can also mean really unsettling emotions. It can mean really crippling self-doubt. And again, that's usually in the sense that you're not really, if you avoid analyzing the moon, if you avoid that knee-jerk reaction, if you say, oh, I'm not going to try to figure out what that is, it doesn't matter, you push it down, then the moon might come up in the reverse. and that meaning that it is going to pop back up, and it's not going to be pretty when it does. It's going to be a warning of danger at that point. And then also the moon in reverse can be something more serious, like a real emotional breakdown. If you see it next to a card like the Queen of Cups in reverse or the King of Cups in reverse, it would be somebody who's really not having a good go there. It can also mean, it can mean can mean hidden motives. So if you see like the moon in reverse next to the Seven of Swords, it might be someone who's really trying to get away with something, someone who's gaslighting you. And then lastly, it can usually mean that it's just a real test of faith. But again, these are the heavy hitters, these are the major arcana. Usually the moon in reverse means clarity. And as you can see, it's a powerhouse card in the fact that it means that something is going on below the surface. And if you are very emotionally aware and emotionally mature, you will be able to cleanse your water and get through that dark night and find your way again with your instinct intact. So, as you can see, that is the moon, and whoa, right? Whoa. So like, whoa. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you a minute. We have 3 decks to choose from. I will ask that you just choose from your moon, choose from your instinct, and we're going to go ahead and see how the moon manifests in your life. If you were drawn to a deck because of its artwork, or because I do ask that you just kind of choose from your gut instinct. A few ways that you can do that is if you kind of lean towards a favorite number. We do have 3 piles. You can also look at the timestamps. Sometimes the timestamps stand out to me. Another nice way that I like to kind of get a bead on what pile is for me is that a lot of readers will say, take a deep breath, really, fill up the gut. And then I like to look at each pile and ask the same question. How does the moon resonate in my life? And if you ask that same question as you look at each deck, the one that is meant will ping. It'll kind of give you that little doink right in the middle of your chest. But everyone has a different process. Whatever process works for you. I'll go ahead and pause the video. If you need more time, go ahead and pause the video if you need more time, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. The first deck is the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. And we did spend quite a bit of time describing the card. Again, if anytime you want to jump straight to your reading, the timestamps are below. But, a few cards, we talk about it a little bit longer. But, all right, deck number 1. Ooh. How does the moon manifest in your life? I'm going to leave this here. Oh, thank you. And may I have some clarification for the King of Swords? Thank you. All right, guys. I'm definitely I'm seeing a lot of people here. The moon manifests in your life right now. And again, this is right here. You see this? And this card came in as a block, as a diagonal. So I see in the past that, and again, you can be a man or a woman watching this, I see in the past that you really resonated, you were really in your power. You're a very creative person. You're a very vibrant person. You glow, right? You're very creative and you're very lively in your life. You accomplish a lot and people really look up to you. You're a very warm person and you give a lot. I do feel like people admire you for the things that you do. You're also a very spiritual person. The Queen of Wands tends to be more of the, wands do represent spirit because it's energy being expressed, not as much as cups. Cups are more of an emotional, but the thing that's lovely about the Queen of Wands is that she's a very dynamic person. And again, you can be a man exuding the Queen of Wands energy. But in the past, you plan what you want, you get what you want, you go after it, you do it with a vibrance, and you aren't afraid to stand on your own. You're a very independent person. And so in the past, you're very strong for this. You're a strong person. You in your past, you've always known who you are, right? That's the other thing. It's the thing with ego. It's like you know who you are. And remember what we said about the moon being a reflection. It reflects the sun's rays. So what's happening here is that with all of this outward strength, with all of this outward vigor, inside, or I feel like currently, recently, you've been feeling a little bit trapped. You got the Eight of Swords, and underneath it, you got the Page of Cups, and you got the King of Wands. And the King of Wands is the male counterpart to the Queen of Wands. So basically, I do see that this is a little bit of a partnership. It's a relationship. You have a counterpart, right? And again, you can be a man or a woman watching this reading. You have a counterpart, but there might have been recently some kind of emotional things going on. You were definitely meant for one another. You are counterparts, but you've been feeling a little bit trapped by your emotions. It's almost as if your outward expression, there's something going on with your relationships that's blocked, or it's making you feel like you can't express yourself, right? You're going from being this dynamic, free person on a throne to this woman who's all bound and tied up. And the thing about the Eight of Swords is that this woman can break free. You know, the ropes are not tied that tight. She could grab one of those swords, cut herself free, and take off the blindfold. And her kingdom is right behind her, right? She could just kind of kick over those swords. The thing about the Eight of Swords is that it's the illusion of being stuck. You have the power. You have the freedom. And what's kind of happening is the Page of Cups is kind of it's a small message of love. It's a novice. It's a kind of, it's an immature kind of expression of love, but it is a sincere one, especially when you've got the King of Wands underneath it. So I kind of get this feeling like it's kind of been one of two things. You've had this outward appearance of being very strong, and you are strong. You are very strong. You are excellent at what you do. You are a dynamic person, very creative. And I'm also getting this vibe that you're really seen and acknowledged for this. Like, people know you to be a talented, creative, beautiful person. But you currently feel very stuck, and it's almost as if for all of your accomplishments, you can't seem to get the emotional side of your life in check. You feel stuck emotionally. It's almost like you see how this counterpart seems to be blocking the Page of Cups. It's like you feel stuck because there is no, I think you feel kind of trapped in your love life. You feel like it's just not getting off the ground. If you've ever felt if you've ever felt so, I kind of see this kind of spread whenever, have you ever felt like, okay, I go out there and I kill it at work, and I come home and I own my own house, and I've got, you know, I'm hearing that song Independent, I'm hearing a lot of Destiny's Child today, independent woman, the rings on my hand, I've bought them, the car in my driveway, I've bought it. It's almost like for all of your accomplishments, it seems like you just, for whatever you do, you feel stuck in the emotional realm. Like you can't seem to get the relationship, the heart side of it down pat. It never gets past the, the fledgling expression of love state, and it makes you feel very stuck, and it makes you feel very emotionally bottled up. So moving forward, the future, I'm almost getting a vibe like this King of Swords is your energy, but it's almost as if you're taking a very clinical approach to it. You're kind of looking at the future like, how do I get the 10 of Pentacles, right? I'm this dynamic woman, I have all this energy. Why in the world am I feeling stuck? What can I do to get the 10 of Pentacles? How do I, and I always see this, I always kind of, if you've ever been in the dating scene for a long time, if you're a single person that's had to date a lot or gone out on a lot of dates, you do have moments of exasperation where you're like, I have been on 10 million dates, and finding the perfect partner is not the same as achieving any other goal in your life, right? If you want to buy a house, you save up the money, you put down the down payment, you pay it off, you bought a house, right? If you want to graduate from school, you register for the class, you take all the classes, you do the homework, you get the good grades, and you graduate from school. And there is no process for love that just says, oh, if you do these ABC steps, you're gonna get that perfect counterpart, right? That they'll just poof, show up, and then you're done. So I think what's happening here is that it's making you feel very emotionally stuck because you can't figure out the formula to get this happy ending, because you're going into an energy of control, and the thing is, you're losing kind of the heart center with it, right? You're no longer feeling emotional about it. It's almost making you a little bit hardened, and you're starting to take the statistic, strategy view of, okay, how can I get the stable, happy, solid, reliable, mature home and family? And I think that's where the moon is kind of taking you. It's making you think that it's not attainable, or you're getting frustrated and stuck with the false starts and the not going anywhere, and you're getting tired, and again, the moon cycles. But I think what it's calling here to do, because the other thing is that the two other cards that came out were the Nine of Swords and the Page of Swords. And again, we have page energy here, guys. I mean, the pages are good. They're the beginnings of things. They're the novice, right? So they're upright. So it's not the worst energy in the world. But you're a queen, and you've got all this page energy. You've got like messenger energy around you. And it's frustrating you, right? It's frustrating you because the Page of Cups he's bringing that message of love, right? He's bringing a cup full of clear water. You got a surprise with that fish popping out. But your heart's desire is to have a counterpart, right? Your heart's desire is to have, and it seems to be eluding you, and you're getting into that zone of wanting to try to find the formula that will give you that, but all it's doing is keeping you in this kind of, really anxiety-prone state where you're just kind of mentally going in circles. It's not really giving you what you want. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pull one extra card. So how does our Queen of Wands get what she wants? How can the moon help her, you know, reach her goal? How does the moon? Oh, there you go, guys. Now it is coming out in a little bit of a blocked position. It's coming out in a cross position, but across your 10 of Pentacles is the Hermit. The Hermit, guys. And you know what that tells me? That's actually quite beautiful. It's quite beautiful. First off, the Hermit does mean hope because he has the star in that lantern, right? But it's telling you to go within. The Hermit tells us that you have all of the information that you need to be successful. There's no other activities out in your world that you need to participate with. You know, you have all the facts. You have all the facts. You have enough experience to make the right decision to go forward. You have all of the tools that you need. But what you need to do is you need to go inward. You need to take a time out. Stop pushing. That's what it's telling you. Stop pushing. The pushing is just keeping you chasing your tail, right? So don't push. Find out why, what you want. What do you want, right? What do you want? Why do you want it? Why do you want it? Like, why, what do you want? And then just really, really reflect. Go inside of you and discern how you can make it happen. Because, you know, you have been going in circles. You've been trying to control. The other thing about the Hermit is that he doesn't control. You see his head is almost bowed. It's almost bowed, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. He knows. He knows. He goes up to the mountaintop and he reflects on what happened. He reflects on what he knows, what he needs, what he wants. And when he comes back down off that mountaintop, he'll know what to do next. All right, guys. Wow, got into that. Sorry, that was powerful. But you are a dynamic character. You are a dynamic. You have what you need. You have what you need. All right, so deck number 2, we've got the Tarot of the Southwest Sacred Tribes. I try not to say that too fast because it comes out all like that. All right. How does the moon, thank you, manifest in your life? How does the moon manifest in deck number 2's life? Ooh, way too many cards, I'm sorry. How does the moon manifest in deck number 2's life? Oh, thank you. 2 flipped. Yeah, 2 flipped. Wow, guys, we're getting a story. Ooh, thank you. No, I'm sorry, guys. Way too many cards. Getting the Page of Cups again. I'm going to really clear the run. I don't know if I have cross watchers, if I have 2 people who are opposites watching, picking different decks. I am going to start pulling 1 card for the overall collective too. I think that's a new thing that I'm going to do because I do think that we have a little bit of think tank energy. That does happen. That happens when, you know, it's kind of like the overall pulse of, you know, everyone, you know, how we feel as a collective. So, okay, deck number 2. This is kind of flipping. Can we clarify the Knight of Coins? We keep wanting to get like 5. Okay, 1 card, please. Thank you. 7 of Coins. Okay. All right, I'm kind of getting a glimpse of the Wheel of Fortune. All right, guys. So deck number 2. In the past, the way the moon is manifesting in your life is, in the recent past, you have been a busy bee. You see this person is carrying 10 rods, or he's carrying 6 and he's about to pick up 4 more. And what that is the 10 of Wands is that you're taking on too much. It's the back-breaking you know, you're saying yes to all these obligations. Either that, or you have a lot of irons in the fire right now, and you can't put any of your rods down, but you have so much going on that you're forced to put some of them down. Like you can't carry it all. You're taking on too much. You're taking on too much, and it's weighing on you. And this has been going on for a little while. Now, when we get to the present, you have the Five of Wands and Temperance. Now, the Five of Wands is competition. It's competition and it's conflict. Now, it can be conflict in a real kind of extreme way, like it can be really flat out, you know, not getting along with people. But with Temperance upright underneath, it means that you've been taking on a lot. I'm really getting a vibe of, because it's the moon, I really get the vibe that you've had either family or just obligations, like life and, you know, interpersonal obligations that have kept you very, very weighed down. And it's almost as if you have a very practical approach to the emotions. I don't think you're letting your emotions get out of hand. But what's been happening is your moon or you, I think this pile in particular, this deck in particular, you handle your emotions very well. You handle your emotions very well, but you do take on a lot, like you might take on too much, and I think you're really a peacekeeper. I really think that you're a peacekeeper. You're probably a peacekeeper with your family and possibly at work. But here I'm seeing, you know, Five of Wands usually means conflict, and here you are smoothing out the troubled waters, right? Temperance is the melding of water and fire, right? Which you would think are two elements that don't work well together. But what you do is, I think that you use your moon to help people understand their circumstances. But I think it does sometimes overwhelm you. And I think recently you really have been overwhelmed. I think you've helped smooth out everybody else's problems. Also, I'm kind of seeing this almost in a nurturing way. I'm seeing this more in the mother kind of way, but it affects you as well, because even if you're the mother, if you're the matriarch of your family, you do tend to take, you know, mothers do tend to take on a lot. They not only have to be responsible for themselves, but they're kind of the emotional barometer of their spouse, of their kids, of their family. So you've really been taking on a lot of that. And maybe you've also just been putting your emotional needs to the side in the name of helping or, you know, calming the waters with everybody else. But I do get the feeling like you're not giving enough time to yourself. I don't think you're giving enough time or devoting any time to your own emotional needs. Now, moving forward, we have the Knight of Coins and the Seven of Coins. And again, these are both very practical cards. You know, Earth, they always say in astrology, Earth is the counterbalance to water. So if you have like a Pisces card, Virgo is always the counterbalance to Pisces. If you have someone who's a little too Piscean in their nature, if you get around someone who's Virgo, you start to balance each other. Same thing in reverse. Sometimes Virgos can be a little too nitpicky and a little bit too regimed, and then they get around a Pisces, and the Pisces gets them to lighten up and go with the flow and, you know, just enjoy the ride, right? But the future that I see is that I do see that you have the Knight of Coins, which is that slow and steady progress. And then you have the Seven of Coins, which is the person who's observing it. I'm getting a lot of progress, and I'm getting it in a kind of a financial way. So I think that you're slowly but steadily moving towards a new future. I feel like this is definitely foundation, or it's in the physical world. But I think what's happening is, I think you are contemplating a change in your lifestyle, and that might mean changes in your physical world. Like it could be a move, it could be maybe if you're retiring and you're downsizing to a smaller house, you know, something like that. Maybe you're buying a new house. But I definitely feel like you have your emotions in check, but it's almost as if you need to give your emotional health a little bit more attention, because you've really been working hard and helping everybody else, or you've been keeping yourself in check despite conflict. But moving forward, the way that you're going to manage your moon, the way that you're going to eventually get to you're going to purge or handle your needs and your subconscious emotional desires and wants, is you're going to do it in a very slow and steady way. And you're really kind of looking at, I think you're looking at your finances and saying, okay, how can I get to where I want to be? And you're taking the very slow and plodding steps, and you're putting things in place. But the other thing about the Seven of Coins is evaluating the growth of something in the physical world. So sometimes that can be like you looking at a job and saying, okay, is this really the position I want to keep? Do I want to try for something else? It can be, okay, you know, I've lived in this house for 15 years. It's really too much space for me now. Should I, you know, change residence? But you're doing a very thorough evaluation of your current circumstances, and you're determining how you can change that environment or those circumstances to meet your needs. So this is definitely emotionally mature. I'm getting a very emotionally mature vibe from this. I'm getting a very stable vibe. You're a very hard worker, and you handle conflict well. Like you manage conflict like a boss. And the fact that it's a knight and not a king or queen means that you do feel like you're starting off on a new adventure, right? You're going in a new direction, and it's gonna be a stable direction, but you are still evaluating where you are and what changes you want to make. And definitely the knight always gets where he's going. He takes his sweet time, and he puts all the cornerstones in place, but you will get what you want. But I think you're doing the right thing by you're kind of going in deep. You're going into your emotions to say, what is going to make me happy? And what steps do I have to do to make that a reality, right? And you're being it's very wise the way that you're doing it, because you're doing it in a stable way. You're saying, okay, I know what I've done. I know where I am. I want to do this moving forward. How will this manifest? How can I get this to manifest? And you're willing to do the work to make it happen. So that's really impressive, guys. That's a good moon. That's a very good moon. Again, I think that pile is I'm getting a very emotionally mature vibe off that. Now, the last deck, which is one of my favorites, a new favorite, we've got the Spacious Tarot. And that's a really beautiful moon. It looks like a full moon. I actually took a picture of the MegaMoon once. I'll go ahead and share that with you, but I stood out in a cornfield, and I took the picture of the moon, and it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. So that's what I also think of. You know, the other thing that you remember is that even though, you know, the moon has all these heavy nuances to it in tarot, it really can, you know, almost like judgment, it can really be a calling. It can be you going within yourself, you know, to really discover your inner desires. So deck number 3, how does the moon manifest in your life? Ooh. That wanted to come out. So deck number 3. What is the current? How does the moon manifest in your life? Okay, how does the moon manifest in your life currently? Okay, keep going, guys. Can you see? Yes. How does the moon manifest in in your life? In the future, how does the moon manifest in your life? Ooh. Wow. Okay, and this wanted to come out earlier, but we got the Three of Wands. I'm going to go ahead and take that as a descriptor. But so deck number 3, how does the moon manifest in your life? Okay, so in the past you got the Emperor. And again, this deck doesn't have any humans, it has more perception. And the Emperor is a real interesting card in this because it's a poppy. And, you know, poppies are that deep blood red. And you think of blood, you think of memorial because it is the symbol of fallen soldiers. And you also think of kind of, you know, poppies being a little bit of an opiate, you know, when you think of, you know, the way that their essence is used in kind of more addictive substances. But you see the lines, they're in very rigid lines, and it's this deck again has a lot of interpretation to it. It's a really beautiful depiction of the tarot symbolism. But what I'm kind of getting is in the past, if you can be a man or a woman watching this reading, but in the past you either had a lot of control, like you exuded a lot of control, you really wanted things kind of your way. Either that, or you were dealing with somebody, probably a male figure, like a real, you know, dominant male figure in your life that was a real figurehead. Like it was someone that was, again, the Emperor can be a divine counterpart. He can be a divine masculine. So it could be somebody that you felt was like a real counterpart. It can be a male figure that's like a father or grandfather, or it can be a spouse or a partner. But I'm really getting this vibe that just, I think in the past, I'm really kind of getting almost like this is your energy, that maybe in the past you had a real regimed way of doing things. You wanted everything in a particular order. And I think, again, with it being the moon, I'm getting kind of a vibe that maybe something in your environment growing up made you really regimed. Maybe you were a child of a military family. That's possible with the poppy, you know, where you were just really used to everything being in order or being, you know, a certain way. Either that, or again, you know, with the mushrooms, you could have been a child that was raised with some negative influences, or maybe you had some emotional health issues with people in your family growing up. And I'm really getting this vibe, like sometimes when I see the Emperor, because it's upright, it is somebody who is very regimed and who likes control, but they like control for a reason. And usually I've seen, and you know, from experience, a lot of times we like control because control feels like it feels like a counterbalance to chaos. And in a lot of home environments growing up, if somebody was either, you know, and not in a bad way, there are levels of emotional, you know, disorders, and it doesn't mean that you can't be a functioning adult, you know, but you might have grown up with a little bit of either emotional neglect or emotional instability. And again, not in an extreme, it can be a real mild case of it, but your reaction to anything emotional is to keep things orderly, right? And this can manifest as, you know, keeping your space, having things in a certain order. It can just be feeling like you have control, because feeling like you have control means that things cannot get out of control. And the moon makes you feel like you're out of control, right? So it almost means that you clamp down harder. And I really get a vibe that that might have been an influence from either a maternal person or just your home environment, because the moon also rules home. So from a very young age, you learned how to be self-sufficient, but in that you learned to avoid chaos. And in that sense, remember we talked about the moon pushing down your emotions is like pushing down the cork. In that sense, you have such a control over your emotions that you really don't give them that much expression. And that's the past. So in the past, you might have really had a lot of control or wanted to have things your way. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, as long as you're expressing it in a healthy context and you're not, you're not affecting anyone. Do you, however you want to, because everybody has the other thing is, please take heart in the fact that everybody has damage. There is no one on this planet that is 100% healthy, okay? And we all cope. We all have coping mechanisms. The only other thing is that I'll say that if you have a coping mechanism that you put in place since childhood that maybe you do not need anymore in your adult life, it might be affecting your adult life in kind of a moon sense, right? You're still playing out certain roles or patterns in fear. And remember we talked about illusion or fear or insecurity, in the fear that that old environment is going to creep back up on you, right? Now in the present you got the Ace of Swords and the Child of Cups, and this is such a pretty deck. The Ace of Swords, it means mental breakthrough. It means seeing things from a new angle, taking a new perspective. And the Child of Cups is the Page of Cups. And oh my gosh, I think the Page of Cups has tried to come out in every deck. I think he's our common denominator. But the Child of Cups is so beautiful. She has, the artist depicts it as koi fish, the cups suit. And we're coming up on cherry blossom season. It's so beautiful. But in the center, I do get this feeling, I am kind of getting a vibe like, I think you're coming into a new understanding. I think you've had a recent breakthrough. You've had something really kind of snap you out of this block, this control that you've had. And again, the light doesn't do this justice. It really does look like there's this beam of light from the tip of the sword and the clouds are getting lighter, right? But the swords, the Ace of Swords is that mental beginning. It's the start. It's the start of a brand new, it is almost like a paradigm shift. It's almost as if your mind, it's kind of an epiphany type of thing. Your mind is really opening up. I think you've had a really big realization to the way that this old pattern manifested and the way that this old way of behaving or the way of feeling has affected or either your life or your relationships or just the way that you feel. And with this mental breakthrough, the Page of Cups is taking a very childlike and novice stance it's a start, right? Just like aces are starts, pages are beginners, right? They're learners. They're starting things in a very childlike way. So I think what's happened is in the past you might have had a real rigid or a real kind of regimed way of doing things, and I think you really handled your emotions in a real kind of drill sergeant way, right? And what it was is I think you had some kind of breakthrough. Maybe you had some kind of breakdown with a relationship, or I just get the feeling that there was some kind of catalyst. Maybe the other thing is that with the Emperor, everything seems kind of like in a routine. You kind of march to a certain drum. And when you had this mental breakthrough, I think it really has you wanting to start on a brand new foot. It's almost as if you want to let that control go. You want to let that control go, and you want to kind of follow this new way of thinking, and you're kind of willing to take the little baby steps, right? You're willing to start off as that little koi fish. And that's really beautiful energy, guys, because that is a really difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's hard to let go of, you know, certain programming. It's hard to let go of certain, especially when those patterns have become so ingrained, right? You know, it feels safe, right? That's the other thing about the moon, is that sometimes you can feel really unnerved because it's such, remember we talked about the wolves, it's such a primal energy. And, you know, if you had in your, either in your environment or your childhood, that energy not serve you well, or that energy intimidate you and make you feel insecure, unsafe, you might be very fearful to embrace that energy now, to kind of let it off its leash, so to speak. But here I'm really getting the vibe as if you've had some kind of mental breakthrough recently where you really want to do things differently. You want to do things differently. You don't want to do things in an extreme pattern. I also think that if this is a person, maybe you are having kind of a breakthrough, you know, where you're starting off on a new path that's separate from this. It's just, you're going to try to be easy with this. You're going to take it from a child's perspective and just go slowly and go gently. You're almost like you're going to follow that new thought and see where it leads. And you're going to do it in kind of an instinctual way. You're going to trust and follow it, right? And again, that's very brave of you. The other thing about the Ace of Swords is it is like picking up the sword. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to do this. Let's go, right? Let's go. And it does take a lot of trust. It takes a lot of instinct to walk through that dark path and find your way. Now, as you move forward, we got the Six of Swords. And the Six of Swords, again, you see that light breaking through the clouds, right? In the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, it's the people in the boat that are slowly traveling to calmer waters. So I think you are going to make slow and steady strides, and you're going to find yourself in a better place. And again, there's a lot of faith that you're having here that where you're going, even though you might not know where you're going yet, that it's going to be good. It's going to be different, but it's going to be new. It's going to be new, and you're assuming that it's going to be a happier place, which it looks like it will be. And I know it's kind of hard to tell, you know, it's kind of hard to tell from here, but I'm getting a very, you know, again, this is also a very positive manifestation of the moon. And I can just say you guys are so brave. You guys are so brave, because you're really, you know, if you've ever had those moments in your life where you've done something a certain way your whole life and it's just not working for you anymore, you know, letting it go, trusting that you're going down a new mental path. And also, you know, just the bravery in doing something new and being that learner again, right? Putting yourself in the shoes of saying, you know, I'm this old, I'm this many years old, but yet I don't know how to do this. Please show me the way, and trusting that the universe, or, you know, is going to send you people, it's going to send you guides, it's going to show you the right way to get to someplace better. Now, the card I'm using as just an added kind of theme kept wanting to pop out, and it was on the bottom of the deck, but you got the Three of Wands. And you know how we said about lighting your path? I mean, look at that, guys. That's really beautiful. And the Three of Wands is a very spiritual, it's a very action-oriented card. And here you have, it's still a dark path. It's still a moonlit path. But here it's almost like with every action that you take, you're going to see your way forward, right? You're going to see your way forward. So I do think it's the universe kind of giving you a pat on the back to encourage you to keep going. Just keep going. And, you know, I'm not, the one thing is that the moon does have an inherent element of fear, you know, because sometimes you can't, sometimes, you know, you have to keep taking that next step. But I really am getting the vibe with this card that as you take each step forward, another lamp will appear and let you, so you know that you know where you're going. You know where you're going. But you are moving slowly and steadily to a better mental place. And definitely just trust your instincts, trust your emotions, and just keep slowly and steadily going forward. And I have a feeling like you have some good things coming your way. That's really beautiful, guys. Wow, that's a really lovely read. All right, well, that is our moon reading, and oh gosh, I know that one went a little bit longer, which some of the How to Tarots do, but that I knew that was going to be another big one. But I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you can join me this weekend for the weekly energy card reading. We do have one more reading coming up before Valentine's Day. So we're going to do the reading this weekend and then the following weekend. The next card that we're going to be talking about is the next How to Tarot Tuesday is going to be a great one. This time we're talking about the moon's opposite. We're talking about the vibrant sun. So I hope you can join me on Saturday and then the following Tuesday. And I thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you then. Bye.